Welcome to part 2 of Common English Mistakes. I'm Abeer Shah and you're watching Sayyid Fazil Bukhari YouTube channel. So, in the last video, we actually talked about question formation. So, this is going to be the continuation of it. So, if you haven't seen the first video, go switch to part 1 and then come back. So, the formula for this particular correction would be, we're going to go with the question word, auxiliary verb, subject, and then the main verb. But what we're going to do is, we're going to incorporate indirect questions right before the question word itself. यानी अगर हमारे पास ये है do you know, so do you know is already like a question, but it's not a direct question, it's an indirect question. We have a few examples of indirect questions. Can you tell me, may I ask, or do you know? These are examples of indirect questions. So whenever our sentence starts with an indirect question, हम क्या करेंगे? Indirect question पहले लिखेंगे, question word second पे लिखेंगे. So this is going to be like this: question word, indirect question. Do you know who is that man? Now normally that sentence sounds correct. Who is that man? But it's not. The correct sentence would be, do you know who that man is? Because we have indirect question here, question word exactly where it is, and then we move on to auxiliary, main subject, and then main verb, right? So the correct sentence would be, do you know who that man is? So remember, whenever you're doing indirect questions or whenever you're adding indirect question to your sentence, which can be any of these, or even there are more types of it, which we can mention right here in the video, then you have to use this formula of question formation to correct your sentence. Now we're going to talk about tense errors. Here is the incorrect sentence. This is the most common mistake that people make. I am working as a lecturer. It sounds like it's correct, but the thing is, whenever we are going to talk about an occupation, something that you do as for example a job, you're going to use present simple tense. But if you're talking about something that you are doing currently, for example, I'm walking, I'm talking, I'm speaking to the camera, I'm using my phone, this is when I'm going to use present continuous tense. So ing form in the verb will always be used whenever we're talking about something that's currently happening, not when we are talking about our occupation. So the correct sentence would be, I work as a lecturer. Now, applying that same rule in the second correction, we have, I am walking in the park. Now that is correct because that is something that you are doing, right? But the incorrect would be, I walk in the park, because according to this, what is currently happening, I'm going to use this correction as an example of something that is currently happening. So it's not exactly a routine right now, it's not an occupation, it's just something that is currently happening. So when there's something, we're talking about something that is currently happening, we're going to use walking or verb with ing. Correct? Moving towards the next correction, we are dealing with permanent situation here. So whenever we have a permanent situation, we are going to use present simple tense with it. So for example, I am having a large family is going to be an incorrect sentence. What's going to be correct is, I have a large family. So what we did was, we switched or we shifted ing and we just wrote have. Then we have, I am having a big house. So we are going to make the same correction. We're going to take out or eliminate ing from this verb and we're going to write, I have a big house. So the correct sentence would be, I have a big house and I have a large family. Moving on, now we're going to talk about verb errors. So whenever we are using verbs, the typical mistake, the most common mistake is that people use state verbs and use ings with it. For example, I don't think he is recognizing me. Now technically that sounds like a correct sentence, but it's not. Why? Because state verbs cannot be used with ing. State verbs are actually verbs जो express करते हैं किसी situation, कोई possession में आप हो, कोई आपका likes हो, कोई dislike हो, कोई opinion हो, कोई thought हो, anything like that that expresses a state of being, that is going to be a state verb, and you cannot use ing with a state verb. Just keep that in mind. So I've written up types of states here, types of state verbs here: wants, likes, thought, opinion, possession, relation, and other different types. I'm going to put up some more examples over here for state verbs. They can be need, think, forget, belong, seem, and etc. Moving on to the correction. I don't think he is recognizing me. So the correct would be, I don't think he recognizes me. So there's no ing used here. Second one would be, I don't believe she's liking me. That sounds correct as well, but see, we cannot use ing with it. So we have to say, I don't believe she likes me. Next we have, I don't think it's costing too much. Well, the correct would be, I don't think it costs too much. So according to this state, we cannot use, or this state verb, we cannot use ing here. So it would be costs. Moving on to the next correction. Present perfect continuous tense will always be used with an action that is still happening. So we have this formula here: subject, have or has been, verb plus ing form. So we have to use have or has, we have to use been, and we have to use verb with ing. Now if I'm going to talk about this sentence, I'm working here for 3 years. The correction would be, although it kind of sounds correct, but the correction would be, I have been working here for 3 years. Why? Because I am working. So it is still happening. It is something that is happening. It is something that is in continuous. So we are going to use ing with the verb along with have or has been. Next would be, I am dreaming about it for a year. Now the correction would be, I have been dreaming about it for a year. So year suggests a time duration and dreaming suggests that I have been dreaming. So it's something that is happening or is still happening, and I have this ongoing situation. So I'm going to use have been with it. So the correction would be, I have been dreaming about it for a year and I have been working here for 3 years. Moving on to the next correction. Okay, so the next common mistake people make is between since and for. So what happens is, whenever we're going to use since, we're going to use it whenever our sentence has an exact time mentioned, a time duration or a time mentioned. But we're going to use for whenever there is a particular amount of time mentioned in the sentence. So I have this sentence, I have been waiting for you since 4 hours. But the correction would be, I have been waiting for you for 4 hours, because 4 hours suggests an amount of time, not an exact time. So the next correction would be, we have been waiting for you for 9 o'clock. So when we're talking about 9 o'clock, so that is an exact time mentioned. So whenever our sentence has an exact time mentioned, we cannot use for with it, we have to use since with it. So we're going to say, we have been waiting for you since 9 o'clock. So that's going to be the correct mistake people make when they use the word yet. Yet means until now or up until now. So the most common mistake is that people, whenever they're using yet, they use it with past simple tense. So yet means until now, which means there is an uncertainty of time. So you're not sure about the time, you're not sure about when the thing started or what's happening. You just know that it's something that's up until now. So whenever you have that situation, you're going to use present perfect tense, not past simple tense. So our correction would be, we didn't receive the parcel yet. Although it would be actually, we haven't received the parcel yet. Okay, so the next common mistake people do is not using will for their promises and commitments that they're making. Whenever you're making promises, commitments that are actually due in the future, you have to use will along with it, okay? So for example, I say, I come to see you at your house tomorrow. Now I did add tomorrow here, right? So I'm talking about the future, but I did not use will here. So the correct sentence would be, I will come to see you at your house tomorrow. Second would be, we will get engaged on 10th of January. Now according to this rule, okay, we have to use promises that will with promises and compromises. According to that rule, this sentence should be correct, but it's incorrect. Why? Because 10th of January, see, when we're talking about events that have a fixed date and time, whenever there are events that have a fixed schedule or they are planned, there are arrangements that have to happen in the future, we can't just use we will with it, okay? What we have to do is we're going to use we're going to use we're getting. So what we're actually doing is we're using present continuous tense. Simple, we're going to change will to present continuous tense. So we're going to shift that format and say we are getting engaged on the 10th of January. So this would be correct, and the incorrect would be we will get engaged on the 10th. Normally it kind of seems like it's correct, but it's not. You have to be aware of that mistake, because when you have to see whether or not you're talking about a constant arrangement. Whenever we're talking about that, you have to avoid using will with it. So we're going to use the second correct format, which is we are going to get engaged on 10th January. It's again present continuous tense for fixed arrangements. So yeah, so that's it for today. I hope you liked the video. Like and subscribe. I'll see you in the part 3.